Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. The major festivals such as the Edinburgh Festival, Tea in the Park, Celtic Connections, St Mungo's, St Magnus and so on, all hugely important to Scotland's culture and to its economy. Now, I was slightly surprised in the Minister's introduction to learn that his festival debut had only been within the last year, because indeed my festival debut precedes his by almost 10 years, as in 1999 I and a number of other MSPs, including Mr McGregor over there, took part in the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and indeed Mr McGregor's rendition of Harry Merry was a stunning success, possibly because it starred the presiding officer in the starring principal role. But enough of that. He was wearing fishnet tights, but he probably will never call me to First Minister's questions again now that I have divulged that particular piece of information. But like other colleagues, Karen Gillan and Alistair Allen, I wanted my contribution to highlight the contribution of local festivals to the well-being, identity, confidence and economies of the area in which they take place, and indeed to place on record my gratitude to the volunteers in my constituency who year after year put in their time, effort and commitment into making these events a success. As Alistair Allen referred, the common ridings and ridings of the marches in the borders and the south of Scotland are famous, and that the origins of many festivals date back to the time of the border reivers, where the young men of the community rode around the borough boundaries to check that its landmarks had not been tampered with, either by marauding English people or indeed sometimes by other families who are trying to gain advantage between the warring factions in the borders. None of these are single-day celebrations. Each is preceded by a week or a fortnight of cultural, leisure and sporting activities organised to bring the community together and which reinforce community identity and confidence. The first of these in my constituency, the popular Lockerbie Gala and Common Riding, took place last Saturday, and it is followed by the Good Neighbours Festival in Dumfries, which has been going on all week. The riding of the marches and crowning of the Queen of the South on Saturday celebrates the granting of the status of Royal Borough to the town of Dumfries in 1186 by King Robert III. Indeed, my own horse will be taking part, and before the Minister for Culture becomes too excited about the prospect of a by-election, it will not be me who is on his back. Allen riding of the marches, which takes place on the first Saturday in July, lays claim, as do others, to a tradition which is well over 600 years old. But it has developed over that period of time. I added a gala, and a more recent addition, the pipe band contest, is an increasingly important part of the day, and now it attracts over 25 bands from across Scotland, culminating in a massed pipe band and drums performance in Annan High Street in the evening. And I have to say that the closing rendition of Highland Cathedral cannot fail to make the hairs rise on the back of the neck of those who listen to it. Langham Common Riding, like Selkirk, may indeed be able to lay claim to an even more ancient heritage. Langham Common Riding takes place on the last Friday of July, and it does attract tourists from across the UK, and as Karen Gillan said, it is a true homecoming event, because people come back year after year after year to visit Langham Common Riding. It celebrates the definitions of the boundaries of the town and the rights of the community granted by the Court of Session in Edinburgh. But in fact, the origins of these very ancient common ridings may be the Celtic Lunasa Festival, which in Anglo-Saxon was known as the Lammas Festival, which took place around the end of July, beginning of August, and marked the beginning of the harvest. And that festival was associated with horsemanship and horse racing in honour of the Celtic goddess Epona. And indeed, horse racing and horsemanship is very much part of the Langham Common Riding. I'm always amazed that the gallop up the narrow Kirk Wynd, lined with observers, still manages to escape the health and safety police, and long may it do so. And as my mother is currently in the gallery, I have to say that the decision I took once to invite her, my father and all our dogs to stand at the bottom of Kirk Wynd as we are passed by the cornet and the entire procession of horses at full gallop was probably one of the most foolhardy decisions I have taken. But galas also take place in Moffat, Lochmaben, East Driggs, Bridekirk and Kirkpatrick Fleming, in each case, large or small, promoting a sense of community identity, attracting visitors and thereby supporting the local economy. However, the organisers of these marvellous events have been subject to an increased bureaucracy as a result of legislation passed in this Parliament in the form of the Police, Public Order and Criminal Justice Scotland Act of 2006. The relevant provisions of this Act were intended to deal with the very important public order issues which can arise from sectarian marches and political demonstrations. And councils require the organisers of events to provide various bits of information, some of which, I have to say, are totally irrelevant to common ridings, galas or indeed remembrance parades. Now, when I raised the burden of this unnecessary bureaucracy with the Cabinet Secretary for Justice last year in regard to traditional galas and so on, I was advised that Dumfries and Galloway Council could apply to the Scottish Ministers for an exemption for certain types of processions, for example, common ridings, galas or indeed Remembrance Day parades. Dumfries and Galloway Council wrote to the Cabinet Secretary for Justice in November 2008, applying for an exemption for common ridings, traditional galas and Remembrance Day parades. 5 months later, with the common riding and gala season only weeks away, Mr McCaskill eventually responded to turn down the Council's request. Now, I understand that one of the very long-standing organisers of the Langham Common Riding, Stuart Thompson, has already spoken to the Culture Minister about this, and I too would ask him to support Dumfries and Galloway Council's request for an exemption, because these events are totally reliant on the goodwill of volunteers who bring them without pay, give up huge amounts of time. I am aware that the organisers of these events, as soon as one event is finished, they've started organising the event for next year. They don't actually need to be treated as if they're an organiser of a political demonstration or a sectarian march. And I would ask the Minister for Culture if he would himself speak to Mr McCaskill. So if Dumfries and Galloway Council does repeat their request next year, that perhaps we could get it granted the next time. Thank you.